Good morning, Course 2. I'm going to be explaining Lesson 107 on slope. And this is the third time I've tried to do this lesson, so I'm getting a little frustrated, and my drawings are already on the paperwork. So follow along carefully so I can help you. Slope's a really important concept. From this point on, you're going to hear about slope in all your other math courses. You're going to hear about it in pre-algebra. You're going to hear about it in algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. So this is important. All right, let's say we'll define what slope is. And let's say this is my bicycle, and I'm about to take a ride, and I climb on it. And as I go down my street, this is zero slope. There's no slope. I'm just pumping and going along. Then all of a sudden, I go uphill. When I go uphill, it takes more leg strength. I have to pump harder. I'm going uphill, uphill. This is the positive slope. When I hit the top, now I'm going to go head downhill. And this is where you can take your legs off of your pedals and you can just go like the breeze. The only thing you have to worry about is not running off the road because your bike is going down, pulled down by gravity. This is a negative slope. The slope information is it's very important to know because you'll be having questions about these as you go along. There's one other type of slope, and this is if this is a cliff here, and I decide I want to ride my bike up the cliff. Can I do it? No, I'm going to be falling over and crashing and burning right here. So that kind of slope, vertical line up and down, cannot be determined. So here we have two functions, the graph of two functions, and this is the number of feet and the number of yards. So this is the change from yards to feet. So what we have here is a point where the lines go through right where the crosshairs of each square of the graph paper is. So for 1 yard, there's 1, 2, 3 feet. It's real important to look at what the names of these graph parts are. This is yards, this is feet. Then if I go to a second yard, 1, 2, 3 feet. Notice I can write coordinate pairs 1, 3, 2, 6, 3, 9. Now this one is feet to yards, and here we have feet, and here we have yards. So now we have 1, 2, 3, that's the run of feet, and we have a rise of 1. So now I have 3, 1 as my coordinate pair. If I move on to the next one, it'd be 4, 5, 6, and now I go up 2, and now 6, 2 is my coordinate pair. If I go another one, it's 7, 8, 9, and up 3, 1, 2, 3, and there's my coordinate pair, 9, 3. So what we're learning is that to write the slope, we write the rise over the run. So in this case, the run was 1, and that would be on the bottom of the equation, and the rise was 3, 1, 2, 3, and that goes on the top. So my slope is 3 for this one. On this one, my run is 1, 2, 3, so that goes on the bottom, the 3, and my rise is 1, and that goes on the top. And so my slope for this one is actually the number 1/3. All right, let's look at example 1. It is on page 746. And I'm going to talk about these slopes. I want you to state whether the slope of the line is positive, negative, 0, or cannot be determined. All right, this one is like when I was riding my bicycle up the hill. So this is a positive slope. This is when I was riding my bike on my street and there was no slope. So that is called a 0 slope. And this one is like I'm taking my bike downhill So this is the negative slope. And this one is the vertical. It's like my cliff right here, and it cannot be determined. There is no slope, but it cannot be determined. It's not zero, it's no slope. We'll come back to do some of those equations later. Okay, figuring out, we have to figure out a numerical way to figure our slopes. And, oops, I got the wrong one first. Just let's look at it in general. These two are identical, and these two are identical. This is like riding my bike up the hill, so this is a positive slope. This one is like riding my bike downhill, and so it is a negative slope. Now, we have to determine rise and run. The rise is, we think of a rise, everything is a rise. Well, this is a positive rise. Going vertically, here's where the line comes through. This is a negative rise. There is such a thing. When it goes down below, when it goes downward, then it's a negative rise. To the right is a positive run. To the left of the point is a negative run. So those are what we use to determine. I'll explain it more as we go. So let's look at this one. We have a point here and we have a point here where the line goes directly through. We don't take the points along here because the line doesn't intersect exactly with the squares. So here, if I take my run first, 1, 2, and we said slope is rise over run. I went 1, 2, that's a positive 2. And starting from here, I rise up 1, 2, 3. And that's also a positive 3. Those are the directions that they were going. So when I, positive divided by a positive is going to be a positive. So for this particular one, my slope is going to be 3/2. Now this is my negative slope. I'm going to start here. My run is 1, 2, but I'm going to the left, so it's going to be a negative 2. It's rise over run. And from here, I'm going to go up 1. So now I have a positive 1 divided by a negative 2. That's going to give me a negative, and it's going to stay 1/2. That is going to be my slope for this particular line. Now, the question is, what if I don't know which ones I'm determining? Let's say I pick this dot and this dot. So if I count my run over, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. So my run would be 4 on the bottom. And then I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'd have a rise of 6. Well, I have to reduce that, right? So it'd be 3 times 2 over 2 times 2. These would cancel. I have 3/2. My slope is exactly the same. As long as I follow the rules of counting over and up, and I follow the rules of fractions where you reduce, you're going to end up with exactly the same number. So now the question is, does that work in the negative? Well, let's take this dot and this dot, okay? So now my run's going to be, it's going to the left, so it's going to be negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have a negative 6 on the bottom. My rise is going to be positive. 1, 2, 3. And a 3 on the top. This becomes a negative. Well, this is 3 times 1 over 3 times 2. These cancel. My answer is going to be negative 1/2. And that is the same as this one. So as long as the line is going through 2 points, you can determine the slope by counting over. All right, so here's some more information. Slope equals rise over run. And yes, I've said that a bunch of times, and I do want you to learn that. That's really important. The line whose rise and run have equal values has a slope of 1. A line whose rise has the opposite value of its run has a slope of -1. So here we have equal values, 1 over 1. The slope is 1. And here we have values that are the opposite. Here's run -1, rise +1, and you're going to end up with a -1. So now they wanted us to determine the slope of this line. This is like me riding my bike uphill, so this is going to be a positive slope. And slope is rise over run. And if I start with this point and this point where the line goes through there, I'm counting my run would be 1, 2, 3. So I would put that right here, 3. My rise is 1, 2. And here I go. There's my slope. It's 2/3. Now the question was, what if I pick a point that's not the same point that the book picked? What if I pick this one over here? Well, what we would do is we would determine that we would count 1, 2, 3, and that's a positive. I did that wrong. Starting here, I would go 1, 2, 3. It's to the left, so that's a -3 on the bottom. And then I would count down 1, 2, since that's a negative rise. That goes on the top. Now look what happens. I have -2 divided by -3. Negative divided by a negative is positive. So my answer turns out to be positive 2/3, which is exactly the same. So as long as you're counting and keeping track of things correctly, you're going to end up with the right answer, even if you choose a different point to determine it from. All right. I do believe we are ready for our practice problems. Okay, the practice problems are on page 450. Page 450. And here's the problems. And we're going to be using some of the other information that they gave us. So the first one says, find the slopes of yards to feet and feet to yards graph on the first page of the lesson. So this is the page they're talking about. And they want us to find the slopes. So we have these points that we determined. So let's just take one. Here, taking this, remember, it's rise over run. So my run here is a +1. So I'm going to put it on the bottom. And my rise is 1, 2, 3. And that's going to go on the top. So 3 divided by 1 is 3. That is the slope of this line. Now you can see that even though this is kind of the same information, they're putting it a different direction. This slope is very, very sharp. This slope is much more gradual. They are both positive slopes. You're going uphill on both of them. Okay, this one, we would count our run 1, 2, 3. And remember again, it's rise over run. The run is 3. The rise is going to be 1. And so our slope for this particular one is 1/3. And we have finished A. So if you go and write your A out, this is a practice set. Lesson 107. For A, you have yards to feet and feet to yards. The yards to feet was, remember, rise over run. And so it was 3 over 1, which is going to equal 3. That's our slope. The feet to yards was also rise over run. And the run was 3, which went on the bottom. The rise was 1. And for that one, the slope is 1/3. Question B. Find the slopes of A and C in example 1. So now I'm going to bring in example 1 to look at again. Here's A and C. If we're going to find the slope, we locate points that go right through the places where the graphs run through, or they mark right through it. So here I have on A, I have a run of 1 and a rise of 1, which makes it 1/1, which means our slope is 1. What if I choose the wrong one accidentally? Let's say I choose this one and this one. So my run would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So my run is 4. And my rise would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And look what happens. When I reduce this correctly, it's going to also be 1. So you're going to end up with the correct answer. Now C, if we start here, where our run is 1, 2, that is going to the left. So that's a -2 on the bottom. And our rise is 1. So there is my slope, -1/2. Now what if I determine I use this one right here and this one right here? Let's see what happens. My run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a -8 over 1, 2, 3, 4. Positive divided by negative is going to make it a -1/2. It turned out just the same as when I did it this way. So there's no problem with doing that. Okay, so let's see. A was 1 and C was -1/2. So now we go to question C, which is these right here. Mentally calculate the slope of each graph line below by counting the run and rise rather than by drawing right triangles. Okay, that's what we have been doing. Here's A, here's B, C, and D. All right. First of all, we look at this. I'm riding my bike uphill, so this is going to be positive. Starting here and here, this is where my 2 points are. So I'm going to be doing rise over run. So I'm going to count my run first. 1, 2, 3. So my run is 3. My rise is 1. So my first one, A, is going to be 1/3. Now B, if you look at this, I've got a negative slope because I'm going downhill on my bike. I'm starting at this point, counting over 1, 2, 3. So the run, remember, again, rise over run. On the bottom, I'm going to have -3 because I went to the left, right? Correct? 1, 2, 3, and then I'm rising up. 1, 2. So my slope is going to be -2/3 for B. C, this is where we have no slope. This is going to be 0 slope. There's no positive, there's no negative, it's 0 slope. It's a horizontal line. Okay, this one, if I look at, if I'm riding my bike down this one, it's going to be very fast because this is going downhill. So starting at this point, I count over 1. My run is going to be negative. Rise over run. On the bottom, I have a -1, and my rise is 1, 2. So it's 2 divided by -1, which is going to give me a -2. That's going to be my slope. Letter D, we actually already did that, so we're not going to answer that question. But good, you finished up. If you have questions, call me. Good luck on lesson 107.